So, Tills, thank you for joining me in London today. Is this your first time coming to London?
I've been here quite a bit recently. I used to not be a big fan of London, to be honest.
Why not?
I believe the story's a little bit too much of what I saw on Instagram. You know, I've watched things like Stolen Watch Gang and things like that, where every day I was just seeing people's watches getting stolen, phones getting stolen. But for business, I've been here quite a bit now over the last couple of months, I'd say. I think I've been here 5 times in the last 4 months, something like that. And London has really grown on me. And of course, we saw each other in Dubai as well.
We did.
Now here in London. Thank you very much for having me.
No
Hope
problem.
we can talk about some nice things.
Thank you. Thank you for
you very
joining me.
much.
So, what was your first initial thoughts when you came to London?
Look, I was in London, let's say around May, where I had a big meeting with Fine & Country to speak with them about bringing Fine & Country towards Dubai. I was here on the day that all the trains got cancelled, everything got cancelled. So it was a little bit of a hectic time. I had to prepare for a big meeting, and I left the next day again because I was on actually a holiday. So I didn't see too much. However, I loved where I was. I was in the Hyatt in Mayfair, I believe, and it's such a beautiful area. Every time since then, I've been coming back to Mayfair, and every time that I come to London, it grows on me tremendously.
Yeah, nice. So, tell us a bit more about who you are, what you do, where you're from, your background.
Without going into too much detail, I was born in Mexico. My parents are German, but I've lived all over the world. The UAE is now the 7th country that I live in. I'm the CEO there for Fine & Country Dubai.
Nice, congrats.
Thank you very much, appreciate it. I'm also the CEO for a yacht brokerage there. And I have my own consultancy as well that specializes on bringing international businesses to Dubai, being the middleman to mitigate any risks that they have and, let them penetrate the market in an effective way.
So you're quite busy.
I'm quite busy. Every time I come to London, I feel like I'm not getting enough work done because the work days are so short here compared to Dubai. But that's why, for example, for you as well, of course, you're looking towards, or you're traveling quite a bit between the two countries. I think you can see when you come to Dubai that it's actually quite a 24/7 place as opposed to London in terms of work, right?
Yeah, I probably did the same amount of work in Dubai, in the UAE, that I did over here. So it was just constant. But I felt like I had more energy, and I know a lot of people say that when they're out in the UAE, you feel like you've got more energy. But yeah, probably the weather, the energy levels. So, you need high energy out in the UAE, and it's fun.
Yeah, I notice it every time that I'm here, the grey clouds, it just feels depressing in a sense. I don't have the same energy when I wake up in the morning as I do in Dubai. And I think, let's speak about the temperatures and things like that as well.
Here?
Yeah, here.
Okay.
When I'm in London, I don't have the same energy as I have in Dubai, which is what you just mentioned as well. Now, you travel quite a lot between the two places. What's the reason? What attracts you about Dubai? Let's ask that question.
Yeah, good question. So it's stepping into the unknown, really. And there is a level of wanting to see what a lot of people in the UK have obviously left, a lot of Europeans recently. And it's quite easy to think that there's a shift happening, but I just felt that the shift had already happened. And I hadn't returned back to Dubai since 2019, 2020, so since COVID. So it was important for me to meet clients, meet brokers, friends and family that are already over there, and just, see if I can do business from the UK, not having to be in Dubai full time, and not putting too much plans ahead, just being a bit more spontaneous.
I think everybody asks the question, why go to Dubai? And what are you going to, or why do you go to Dubai? I think I want to ask the question, if you are in Dubai, what do you miss about London or about England?
I don't, to be honest, which is consistent with everyone who's in Dubai, who's left from the UK. Apart from close family and friends, there's not really much to miss.
You are a big family guy, right?
Yeah, I'm definitely a big family guy. But yeah, there's not really much to miss. I've been back and forth from London previously.
And I mean, it's a quick trip back and forth, right? Unless Heathrow closes, you have to fly to Manchester, which is what I had. But usually if you fly Emirates, for example, it's a direct flight, 7.5 hours or something. Hop on the plane in the evening, wake up in the morning there in Dubai.
I like Saudi. Saudi was quite interesting. Yeah, it was my first time to Saudi. And it's pretty much maybe Dubai 15 years behind. But as a financial hub, I think it could be quite a big hitter if you look at all the corporations moving over.
I mean, if you look at the size of it, I compared it on a map the other day. You pretty much stretch from the bottom of Portugal all the way up to almost Poland. I mean, it's an insane size of the country. I believe even just the Neon project, I believe, don't quote me on this correctly, but it's the size of Belgium, the mass of land that they want to be developing. So it's an insanely sizable country. I think the population is a lot bigger than the UAE as well. I think there's something like 30 million or something like that.
Saudi Arabia's huge. The thing, look, I guess with Dubai, it's a small pond with loads of fish.
No.
So you have an opportunity to really make money, but there is going to get to a point where things are probably going to start correcting, as you probably can see now, right? And I watch brokers over here versus watching brokers over there. And what I like or what I admire about successful agents or brokers are people who can operate in different markets. So it'll be interesting to see when the market starts correcting, who can still transact.
To be honest, I'm looking for a market correction. I think we're on the brink of Dubai becoming a stable market, a mature market, in the sense that the prices aren't skyrocketing anymore. Projects are still selling out very fast.
So what did you see for Q1? So we're March now.
Let's see, Q1 has been an interesting month. I haven't looked at the numbers exactly yet because we're about to finish Q1. However, if we look at Q3, Q4 2024, 70% of the transactions in Q3 2024 were off-plan. 30% were secondary market. It changed in Q4. Q4 is a 50-50 split. The reason for that is a lot more people moving to Dubai, meaning that they need to have housing to go towards. It's not only rentals, it's end users as well. Interest rates in the US are dropping. The dirham is directly coupled or pegged to the dollar. So that means what happens in the US happens in Dubai as well, or the UAE. So we see a lot more people going towards the secondary market. So we see that slowing down a little bit. Market's becoming mature. We're starting to reach those prices that prime London has, Mayfair, places like this, which we didn't have before. Now there are developers which are starting to approach those 200 million pound properties, whether it's villas, whether it's apartments. We're approaching those segments, which is a very interesting time for us to be there. And as the market matures, there's not much easy money to be made. I think a lot of these brokers that are, fly by night, work by day, with that I mean, I don't want to call anyone out specifically, but they're brokers that are chasing the money, that are there to take any client, advise them on the project that pays the most commission, and then they leave, block the client, and they're out. So I think the correction in the market facilitates that. And I think brokers like you, for example, are looking to grow an international network and advise clients worldwide. That's a really good sign as well, because if you're trustworthy and you have a good relationship with investors, that's the time to enter the market.
So for me, it's quality over quantity, and everyone says that, but it's, I guess, offering value to your clients so they can see value in the future. It's not about the next 2 to 3 years. I actually see investments now in Dubai being more the secondary market than the off-plan market, especially if you're doing renovations and you're looking to sell within 2 to 3 years. I see more money in that market now rather than off-plan. But again, I'm not an expert in Dubai. If you give the audience a bit of a breakdown about, okay, you have your average investor in Europe, the USA wants to invest in units or villas in Dubai. How does it work? What's the best strategy to do to make money on yields or even make money on capital?
Look, that's a good question. I think you need to have a smart strategy nowadays. People are becoming wiser to what good developers are, what good areas are. So you have to work with a trustable broker that's working in the market and understands the market. And you mentioned, let's say, renovation works. I think renovation works are fantastic if you're looking at villas. Let's say places like the Meadows, where the villa itself is not of the best quality. A lot of them are outdated, but the ground that the villa sits on is astronomical, the value of the ground. Which means if you can buy a villa there, you can tear it down, build it up. That's where you make a lot of money if you want to renovate. If you want to renovate apartments, I always urge for a lot of caution there. Reason being that if someone renovates an apartment and it's in an old building, no one will look at it. People go to the building, then they select a unit. They don't select a unit and then a building. Meaning that if you have a new tower next to you that has a bowling alley, that has a golf simulator, cinemas, you have a new apartment there, and next to it you have an apartment that got handed over 20 years ago where there's a small gym and a small pool, where's the clientele going to go? So renovating an apartment is, I always urge caution when you go that side.
So do you think you can make money in off-plan still in 2025?
I think off-plan is still an amazing place to make money. I always say this. If you're in the desert, the most important thing is to have water. If you have water, you want to be beachfront or you want to be seaside. And even Dubai is running out of space. Now, we've built a lot of palms, but even we are running out of space. And we see that most off-plan properties appreciate to tremendous amounts during the building phase.
Well, if you explain to us about how you can make money, especially if you may not fully be invested in the deal, you might just be putting a deposit down. What does it look like if you're looking to rent it out?
If you're looking to rent it out, there's a few methods. So usually most developers, they require you to pay the full amount before you get the key. Then you get the NOC to rent out the property, which is usually done by one check. For this, we also urge everyone to have a bank account in the UAE, because if you try to come with a check towards the Netherlands, Spain, the UK, it's very hard to cash in a check. Dubai is still outdated in that sense. You also have other...
That's crazy
Yeah.
to me.
The checks, and it deters a lot of people from coming to Dubai as well, right?
Yeah.
Imagine you're used to paying £5,000 in rent per month here. Suddenly you have to put down 60K before even moving towards Dubai, just in rent for a year. So that's what shocks a lot of people. It's a big hurdle for a lot of people.
6 months minimum, would you say?
The long term is usually yearly. There are rental contracts that go a little bit shorter, but usually it's a year, and then usually pay in one check for the entire year. Some landlords allow you to do, let's say, 2, 3 checks, 4 checks as well, which would then be every couple of months.
Interesting. So, what do you love, Tills, about Dubai? What is it that stands out? What do you miss about it when you're away? Everyone will say there's no crime, no tax, but what's the true value that you get being in Dubai?
I think it's the capability to prove your worth. I think in Europe, and I get it every time I come back, I'm a young guy. Every time I come back and I try to have a serious conversation with someone here, they ask, how old are you actually? And they always take age as a means to justify not listening to you. In Dubai, you don't have that. In Dubai, if you know what you're talking about and you have a track record to prove that, people will listen to you no matter your age. And I think that comes to a bit of the Arabic style of bringing family members into the family business at a very young age. So people are used to young people already taking control. That's something that I absolutely value about it. And it's a big bottleneck or a big hurdle that I always had here in Europe. Whenever I try to start a company, people ask, how old are you? And you cannot lie about that, right? But in Dubai, they listen to much more than that. They usually don't even ask how old you are.
Well, they don't care, really.
They don't care.
And you have the flexibility to determine what you want to earn.
Yeah.
Versus out here, you're a bit more restricted in that sense. Kind of now you have the Dubai dream versus the American dream.
Yeah.
Or the UAE dream. And it will be interesting to see how far that dream can go. There's a lot of opportunities. So there's still plenty of opportunities outside of Dubai, but also within Dubai.
That's something that I love about the UAE. They're not only putting money in one area. They're starting to diversify across the different Emirates. Meaning that Abu Dhabi has a lot of leisure. Ferrari World, Saadiyat Island, the Louvre, all these types of things. Dubai stays a strong tourist point, a good economical point, very good for real estate.
So the population currently 3.7...
3.85 as of
million.
the last standings. And they want to grow to around 7.88 million by 2040.
So when people say Dubai is oversaturated, if you look at the amount of people that are coming over versus the amount of units that are being built in Dubai, there's still not enough.
They're building for
supply.
the future, right?
Yeah.
I think there's, let's say, the Netherlands. Let's not call out Netherlands. Let's look at European countries. A lot of the students there cannot find accommodation. Accommodation prices are going through the roof. There's not enough being handed over or built for the population that they're getting. Dubai has seen these things and says, hang on, we don't want to have that. We don't want our city to be bottlenecked in terms of growth by not having enough units. So all these developers are building for the future. They invest millions, billions probably every single year identifying where the trend of population growth is going towards. And that's something we need to believe in. I think as much research as you want to do, developers have more insights. They're better well connected with the government. They know where the insights are going, where people are going. I spoke with someone the other day because we're getting our Emirates IDs reprinted. And he was telling me that there's 10,000 Emirates IDs being printed every day.
Wow.
5,000 of them being to new residents. Now that's across the UAE, but a majority of those are going towards Dubai. So that's a population that's growing by 5,000 people every single day. That's, if over the next, let's say, 15 years, you can look how astronomical the population will grow.
Yeah, and I think that's where you'll see the correction eventually when we head into the future. But Dubai will continuously grow more and more. And if you look at the vision that Dubai are aiming for, or the UAE are aiming for, you tend to find that the issue you have in the UK is there isn't a vision in the UK. Yep. But there is a vision in the UAE, and they provide for their residents first before anyone. So they're for the people.
They're for the people, and they have strict rules and regulations, right? Meaning that if you break the law, it's very easy to get kicked out of the country. It's different to here in Europe, where you get a slap on the hand, you get told don't do it again, and you set back onto the street, and you can repeat the exact same thing again.
And they're great at marketing. Right?
And they're great at marketing.
So in the UAE, it's quite easy to think that crime doesn't exist, and you're kind of programmed in a way where actually the UAE or Dubai probably has criminals there anyway. But once they reach Dubai, they don't think to do crime.
Yep.
But when they're outside of Dubai, they will do. And that logic has just continuously grown. Whereas now in the UK, what you have is people who haven't even visited the UK are already a bit skeptical to visit because they
Like
think,
myself, right?
yeah. Because I think when we met at that restaurant, you said, about being on the phone outside. I said, no, you're fine. You don't need to worry about that, right? But you said no. Like I've seen the videos of people taking phones.
Yep.
And it's a serious issue that people are concerned about. People don't want to have to spend 10 million in London, come outside, and then they can't drive a car, they can't wear a nice watch, or they can't enjoy themselves, right? They've worked hard. Why should you be in a country like that, especially London?
Exactly.
And that's what Dubai provides. So
it provides the safety, and let's post this after I get back, but I don't even lock my door usually when I leave the UAE. Meaning that if I have someone that delivers something, if I have someone that needs to get something from my apartment, my door is always open. Delivery guys, they'll text me, hey, can you open the door? And I say, just open it yourself, it's open. Just put it on the counter when you get inside. There's water in the fridge if you need. And it's that peace of mind. I mean, here in the UK, I'd lock my door 3 times and double check my cameras, for example, when I leave. But that's the peace of mind that Dubai gives you.
Has it always been like that?
It has always been like that. I mean, look, there are the occasional crime rates that come into the market, but they're very easily solved. I mean, the Dubai police does such a great job at just controlling things. If you've seen the video online, for example, it's a single policeman that can hold back an entire highway full of cars on Sheikh Zayed Road, for example, I believe it was. That type of power with the police in the UAE doesn't exist here.
No, interesting. So where do you see, from a location standpoint, the next hidden gem in Dubai?
I think Dubai Islands, maritime city, have a very optimistic future. Again, they're waterfront, beachfront in a sense. I think they have tremendous upside potential to them.
Huge capital growth?
Huge capital growth. We're recommending a lot of our investors to now that have built portfolios in different places that are established. We're telling them, let's take a look at these locations, because if you look at Emaar beachfront, right, it used to be sold 1 bedrooms at 1 million dirham, maybe a little bit more. Right now, the most recent launch is at 4 million dirham.
That's crazy.
It's amazing. Yeah.
So are you talking off plan? You're talking secondary?
Talking off plan for Maritime City as well as Dubai Islands. Now, Maritime City has one existing building by Omniat, which has done quite well already, has very nice rental yields on it. But what Omniat has done now, the Omniat Group, which they renamed themselves, they've pretty much bought 70% of Maritime City. Dedicated some aspects, some plots of it to Beyond, which is their sister company, which is mid-luxury to up-luxury. And then Omniat has kept the top of it for themselves. They're putting a new Dorchester collection there, which will be the most luxurious that you can go. Beyond recently had a launch there, where they launched their 1 bedrooms at 4 million dirham, right next to the Dorchester collection, because it will be upper luxury. The rest of the projects were launching at around 2 million dirham for 1 bedroom. So you can see how that price is already starting to spread across that region.
How is the power of branding these villas, apartments, how does that affect capital growth?
A very good question. And what I like to say is we take Nike and Air Force, right? Their usual shoes are, correct me if I'm wrong, £300, £400 maybe?
Yeah, a bit less.
Less.
Yeah, it all depends on the style.
But then
if they customized it or not.
Throw a brand like Dior on it, and it's suddenly going for thousands of pounds.
Easy.
Real estate in a sense is the same. Now, there are brands where the brand is technically involved as a branding purpose, but the brand actually has no input into the project.
I see.
But then there are projects where the brand itself will have entire consulting groups go behind the scenes to figure out if everything's going to go. They'll have their own team monitoring everything. And those are the branded residences you want to be investing in. The one where the brand actually has an input into everything. Where do you see yourself in the future? Let's say, are you focusing more on Saudi, Dubai? Where do you think yourself, being someone that hasn't spent too much time there, but being quite knowledgeable and well connected in those areas, but being from London, where do you think you would focus on if you were to go that side?
So I don't believe the London market's going anywhere. I don't see wealth going anywhere, regardless if there's a small percentage that are leaving short term with the Labour government in place. Business will still be done regardless in the UK. So I plan on still having business over here. But if I can build a business where I can fluctuate between different cities, probably the Middle East, other parts of Europe, maybe the USA, and I can be back and forth, my brand can dictate which business I decide to take and not take. That's the position that I want to be in, because I want to be able to add value from an international scale. Now, where business is going now, it's quite easy for you to have access to these things just through a phone or through various contacts that collaborate with each other.
It's a new world, right? We can be connected and working 24/7 if need be. I mean, every airline pretty much now has Wi-Fi. Unless I think you go to the American continent, I think you lose Wi-Fi sometimes. But for us, it's very easy to be a businessman and traveling a lot. Of course, you need to have a good credit card that gives you a nice amount of points, but traveling has become so easy nowadays, so hassle-free. Especially if you base yourself, let's say, in Dubai. It's a 24/7 airport. You fly to pretty much anywhere you need to. I mean, if you fly to Miami from Dubai, you actually end up flying over the North Pole, which not a lot of people know. But that's super interesting.
And, London is still one of the biggest financial hubs of the world. So if you're setting up an international business, you are going to want to have some sort of office based in London or surrounding. So, yeah, I just think if you are trying to scale up and you are really trying to be credible on an international scale, you still want to be connected with London. But there is a market that's now left and moved to the Middle East. And outside of just Dubai and the UAE, I just think that direction, there's so many opportunities there. What I love about the UAE, it attracts people from all parts of the world. And it attracts people of all ages. So it's not young people, it's not middle-aged people, it's everyone. And it's not people who are looking to be there for 2 years anymore. It's not people who are looking to be there for 5 years. It's people who are going to retire there. It's people that are going to be there for 10, 15 years. Safe raising families, great schools, and no crime. So they may have an initial plan of staying for 5 years, and now they stay there for 10, 15 years.
Yeah, the demographic is changing in the UAE, right? Like you said, it used to be a lot of expat families there for a couple of years, months even, on contracts. But you really see a lot of people going there now for their entire life. Do you see yourself raising children there? How long would you stay there? What do you think?
Yeah, good question. If you asked me maybe a few years back, I'd probably say I'd visit Dubai, but I'm not sure if I could live there. The interesting thing about Dubai is it's forever changing, and you have to really catch up with Dubai, because you could go 1 year and not go for a few years and it's completely changed. Completely different demographic, different opportunities there, different attraction to what people actually want and see in value. I'm all about customer service first. And I feel that in London, that really lacks compared to the UAE. We can learn a lot from what they're doing. Comfort is everything for me, lifestyle. And the UAE offers all of that. I'm not sure about the summers because they're still a bit too hot. But, if there were opportunities where I could make good money there, being tax-free, I'd probably raise my kids up to about 12, 13 and maybe bring them back to the UK.
I think we had that discussion the other day, right? It's the pre-teens that I think in Dubai can go one of two ways. And I think it's a good place to bring children back to the UAE or to the EU.
Just a bit of a reality check.
Check,
You need
right?
to be, I'll be honest, Tills, you need to be street smart in London. Regardless if you come from one demographic versus another, even in business, you just need to be a bit more savvy in London. So you could quite easily be raised in the UAE, come over to the UK or come to London, and it's a bit of a reality check. So I like the fact of maybe raising my kids up to a certain age, bringing them over to the UK, maybe for GCSE level, and then they can pick and choose whether they want to do in the future. However, you mentioned now that you're the new CEO of Fine & Country. So what is it that you're planning on doing? What does that look like for you? How often will you be back and forth from London? What's the, short-term plan versus long-term plan?
Short-term plan is to create the name for ourselves in the UAE as well. I'm not only focusing on Dubai. I want to grow to the other Emirates as well as cross-border. Let's say Saudi, Oman. Saudi, Oman, I think would be very interesting to go towards. Oman is beautiful, directly connected to the Indian Ocean. I think Saudi, if you look at some of the areas, it's such a beautiful country and it offers so many different things, from skiing to, scuba diving to
Riyadh
business.
or Jeddah?
I think it depends. I like being near to the sea. I've always been a sea type of person, so I'd focus on that side. If you connect to the Red Sea and places like that, it's beautiful. So I think that's somewhere where I'd like to expand Fine & Country as well. Right now, trying to build a team in Dubai. We're actively recruiting. Started off the brand a couple months ago. They're at around 5 agents. We're up to 23 agents now. I want to grow to around 120 to 200 over the next couple of years, which to European offices sounds ginormous. to Dubai standard, it still puts you in the medium range. Now, I think, having 600-700 brokers is a behemoth of itself. I think you're then out of touch with a lot of the brokers, and I think brokers need good leadership to be as effective as they need. Mm-hmm. And I like following the 80-20 principle, meaning that 80% of your business comes from 20% of your agents. Now, if I can have less agents and increase those values, generate even more revenue with even better agents, that's how I want to go. You mentioned before quantity, not quantity. Mm-hmm. That's the way that I want to grow it. Right, we want to be known by the developers, and the reason I want to be known by the developers and to have this size is threefold. One, it's beneficial to the agents because they are able to access stock that they might not have if they're in a different brokerage, if they're small. This is especially if we get exclusivity.
So before you go on to there, when it comes to getting exclusivity with developers, Dubai is pretty much like the Wild West, right? And what's different about the UK versus Dubai? In the UK, you are retained and your seller will pay. But in Dubai, it's very different. It's the buyer who pays and the seller doesn't, right?
It's a bit different. It depends on which side you are. Now, usually, if you're in the secondary market, it's 4% of commission in total, 2% coming from the buyer, 2% coming from the seller. If you represent both,
is that on average?
That's on average. That's the norm. There are companies that will do a little bit less, a little bit more. I think you have the same here in UK. Those that do less make it a challenge for the rest of us to actually handle things efficiently and professionally, but that's the norm. Off plan, we're directly paid by the developer. We're not actually paid by any client, which allows us to become consultants and independent. And that's what I tell a lot of our clients. We're not forced to sell you anything. If you go directly to a developer, they're forced to reach a certain quota. We're not. We're free and independent to sell whoever we want. We look at the client first. We look at what the client wants, and then we get to pick which developer we would recommend at no charge to the client. Whether the client then goes directly to the developer or not, he pays the same price. And that's a common misconception that people have. They think that if they go to the developer, they'll get a discount. They might get a small one. But who's going to help them sell it? Who's going to help them rent it out? Who's going to help them with anything down the line? Developer is there for one thing and one thing only, to sell. And I think developers are there to develop and to build. They shouldn't focus on the sales part. They should leave that to the brokers that have studied that know the market and can recommend that.
So what sort of value are you providing as a broker for an investor worldwide or other parts of Europe who wants to get involved or wants to invest, or even as an end user wants a holiday home or a second home out in the UAE or the Middle East?
We provide the independent consultation, meaning that, again, we don't have any quotas to reach. We go in, we figure out what the best projects are. We're locally based. We're there every single day. We're directly connected with every single developer there. And we really focus on what the client wants. And then we do our independent research. We check all the statistics. Dubai is a very transparent market. Transparency means you can see, if you move there, I can see exactly what you're paying for rent. I can see what your owner bought the property for. I can see what the previous values for that property were. And that's amazing for investors. A lot of investors don't even know where to find that. And that's where we base off a lot of our research to identify what to buy, what not to buy, and if it's a good price.
So would you say there's a lot of due diligence that's needed to be in Dubai? Or?
There's a lot of due diligence that's needed, but not often done. And that's a big difference. I think there's so many brokers that will take a simple brochure from the developer, take a sales offer, directly forward it without ever checking any of the statistics. And I think there's too many clients that believe in that right away.
No, it's quite easy to think you can invest in a unit or a villa and you'll make 30% off your capital just from investing in the off-plan project, right? And that's not usually the case.
It's not usually the case. We always say we like to under-promise and over-deliver, and that's the way that we want to proceed. I'm not going to tell anyone, you're going to make 30% within the first 6 days. It happens. There are those unicorn projects. But let's be realistic. Make your client happy at the end of the day by under-promising and over-delivering, getting him much better returns. But that client's going to come searching for you if at one point you promise him fake things and that doesn't come to fruition.
So what do the payment plans look like in Dubai? Especially if an investor may not necessarily want to put all their capital in straight away. How flexible is Dubai when it comes to investing?
Very good question. There's no straight answer to it. It depends on the developer. Depends what time of the year we're in. Ramadan, right now, in the Muslim culture, is an amazing time to buy. So developers it's in their culture. I think during Ramadan, it's a time of peace. It's a time of well-being. It's about, rewarding yourself in a sense as well. It's about connecting back to the earth. And it's in their culture, it's a great time to buy things or to invest.
Is business done during Ramadan?
Not as much.
Okay.
Ramadan is really about just being with the family, being with friends, fasting. So usually big meetings, things like that, even government, they'll actually be postponed.
I see.
They'll be put usually after Ramadan.
So would you say it's a good time when you're out in Dubai to be traveling to see clients outside of Dubai during Ramadan?
It's a great time, mainly for us because developers have great offers then for our clients, which helps a lot of our clients actually achieve the goal that they want. At the same time, Dubai is quite quiet then, which is a great time to be there because things are cheaper, the roads are more open. It's a great time to do business. However, if you follow European calendar and you also follow the suhoors and iftars that they organize, you end up sleeping 2 or 3 hours per night because you're up again early in the morning to work European calendar wise, but you're up late in the night going to suhoors and iftars.
So what does a day in the life for Tillmann look like? What time does he wake up? What time does he...
I used to be very focused on, let's say, free time and work time. Work time has taken over now. I usually wake up at around 7 in the morning. I go to the office for, let's say, 7:30, 8 a.m. I'll be there for the entire day. I'll usually leave at 12 at night or something like that. If we have a suhoor, which usually starts around 10, 11 p.m., then I'll go to those, and then I'll be home at around 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, back to sleep and up again.
Because how many days a week are you doing that?
6 days a week.
Wow.
Sundays I like to take off for at least half a day and go to a beach club or something like that, get some sun in, get that vitamin D.
Nice.
But it's not the most healthy lifestyle, I know that. However, my girlfriend lives in Spain, so I don't have to take account into that. I get to spend time with my friends because I work with a lot of them. And at the same time, I travel a lot, right? So every time, you know it yourself as well, every time that you travel, when you get back, there's such a backlog of things that you need to go towards. Then a week later, I'm traveling again, so I need to catch up, or I need to preemptively work for those things that I'll miss when I'm not there. So I end up working quite a bit.
So has it always been that way? When did the shift change with your free time now focusing on just business and work?
I've always been very business oriented, entrepreneurial. I think the big shift
Were
came...
you brought up in that way?
Yes.
Okay.
My dad's very much a businessman. My mom had her own businesses and things like that as well. So always raised in that way. But I think the big shift came to me when I was studying in university. Corona came and I went to work at BMW in the headquarters. I had a lot of friends reaching out to me saying, why are you doing university at the same time that you're working? You should be here with us. We should be partying, things like that. And I straight up told them, I have no interest in that anymore. I enjoyed working and, achieving things in life so much that I had no more urge to drink, to party, anything like that. Since then, I've barely touched alcohol or done anything like that.
Offering you a drink, you say I don't drink.
Exactly.
I feel like I'm going to get you on one. Just one.
Someday, maybe, for special occasions. But, I was working at BMW at the same time. Technically, BMW didn't know that I was working there. University didn't know that I was working or BMW didn't know that I was studying. University didn't know that I was working because both of them told me, you'll suffer under that. And I didn't. I had home office, which allowed me to live in Munich, still close to the BMW headquarters. And university was also online. And what I did is I had 2 screens open for BMW. I was working there. I had 1 screen open for university. Oftentimes I'll be in the same meeting at the same time.
Wow.
If I had to speak at the same time, I'd close one of the screens and say, my Wi-Fi stopped working, things like that. But that's where I realized that I can work at much higher rates than I thought I could. And that's where I really realized I want to work as hard as I can. If I compare myself to back then or to the friends that I had back then, some of them are still my friends now. I'm very happy with where I am now.
So what do you see? How would you describe a true entrepreneur? And would you consider yourself a true entrepreneur?
I think a true entrepreneur in my eyes is someone who provides service to a place that needs service. I think that's the easiest way to explain it. And I see myself as an entrepreneur. Right now, I'm very much focused on real estate, but I have a lot of other ideas and other business ideas I want to venture into in the future as well. I like to build up one brand, put in the right people that can handle it for me, and then move on to the next.
And how long have you been doing that successfully for?
5 or 6 years so far.
Nice.
Yeah.
And what's your short-term goals? I guess in finding countries, obviously.
Finding countries to grow it to the point where we have 120 to 200 agents, are well known in the market, become the go-to, let's say, advisor when it comes to real estate investment. And from there, expand it internationally if we focus on finding countries.
So if we flip back to Dubai, what's your top 3 areas within Dubai for you personally?
To live or to invest?
Both.
To invest, I think we go back to maritime city,
Mm-hmm.
Dubai Islands.
So that's one.
They're different places technically. They're different islands. So let's say maritime city, Dubai Islands. I think Shoba Heartland is still a great place to invest, and I think District 11 is an amazing place if you want to go for a villa.
And then future investments, cities-wise.
I think Ras Al Khaimah is a very interesting
Yeah,
place to
tell
invest.
us about that.
Ras Al Khaimah, they've recently obtained the only license, or the first license, to open a casino in the Middle East, which will not be accessible to anyone that's Arab, or I believe even holds an Emirates ID from the rumors that I've heard. However, if
Do you think that could change?
I think it will change. Okay. I think Dubai time and again, or the UAE time and again, has proven that it's able to adapt rules to be able to cater to the greater need and the greater desire to its population. So I think it'll change. But I think that's an amazing place to invest. You know, it's kilometers of untouched, unbuilt area right now. No projects there. It's prime sea. You know, I've been there recently. There's so many turtles. There's so much wildlife there.
Wow.
Next to that, you have Sinja Island. Sinja Island is a location that's bought by Shoba, a large developer in the UAE, and it's full of mangroves. And what Shoba has done is it's connected all these mangroves by roads, and that's an amazing place to invest in. It's technically one of the only natural islands that we have in the UAE.
And the new airport, what side is that? Is that the north?
DWC is towards Abu Dhabi, in the middle of the desert. I think it's an amazing place to invest near there. You know, European culture a lot of time tells us that we want to be away from the airport because of the noise pollution. However, a lot of Asian countries believe that the closer you are to the airport, the more wealthy you are because you're able to travel faster. So I think that's an amazing place to invest as well.
Is that the switch in mindset between European and Asian or Middle Eastern culture?
Yeah, and that's something that I think as a broker, you need to take a lot of account of as well. Because a lot of these places, you have to completely change what you think yourself and look what the greater population that's investing in that area is doing.
What's your thoughts on Abu Dhabi?
Abu Dhabi, I love Abu Dhabi. I think it is an amazing place to go for leisure. Would I live there myself at the moment? No.
No,
I think
not
it's
enough going on?
Not enough going on, exactly. But I think it's an amazing place to invest as well. I mean, a lot of wealth is sitting there, right? It's the main city.
And it's huge.
It's huge. Now, we've talked a lot about me. Should we talk about you a little bit as well?
Yeah, go on. Talk to me.
You know, you want to establish yourself as a player that's international. How do you see the Middle East? How do you see yourself in the future? If you mentioned America, places like that, are you going to be a man that's on the airplane all the time? Or are you going to have teams in different locations? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I've always been a lone wolf entrepreneur. Never really led a team, always just focused on myself and built my business on one-to-one relationships with my existing clients who have referred me to new clients. So my network has always been my net worth, and I've always played on that as one of my strengths. Lucky for me, I've done a lot of traveling, and most people that I come across just generally like doing business with me. So I think I will have to learn a language at some point just to help me.
We could learn Arabic together.
Yeah.
I've launched Duolingo recently. You can still join me.
Okay. So yeah, I'm definitely open for that. And I just think I'm adaptable, so I can adapt to different environments. Now, whether I could be somewhere full-time outside of the UK, I'm still not sure. Possibly. You know, the future could change. But again, it says a lot about a broker who can adapt.
Yeah.
The brokers that I look up to are brokers who can adapt and perform in different markets, in different environments.
A good broker can make money on the way up and on the way down, right, for the market.
Because actually, it is in Dubai, it's a completely different beast to how it is in the UK. In the UK, you could be one of the top agents, brokers, and come to Dubai and actually fail because it's a completely different market. Yeah. How you build your business, how you retain your clients is completely different. And the pace. In the UK, an average transaction could take, high-end level could take 4 to 6 months. Sometimes even longer. In Dubai, it could take 2 weeks.
What's the longest you've had to wait for your commission or a deal
9
to
months.
be closed? 9 months.
Yeah, 9 months.
Reason for that length?
There was a chain, a lot of back and forth, valuations changing, etc. Look, most of my deals I prefer to do outside of chains, but we have to also understand the market conditions that we're in the UK. So whereas maybe in 2022 or 2023, most of my buyers were proceedable in cash, we've now entered a market where not everyone is proceedable, or not everyone's willing to be proceedable. They may not want to put all their cash into one asset. So unfortunately, what that means is now you have a pool of buyers who cannot transact, and are relying on other transactions, and that's what's happening.
So people
Now,
that have their capital tied up.
yeah,
in a
look,
sense.
if everyone dropped their prices, deals would happen. But most people, most of my clients anyway, they're not desperate to move. They would like to move, but they're not desperate to move. And you have the baby boomers who were before the millennials, who made loads of money, and they're sitting on a lot of cash, and they're not desperate to move. They would like to move. And then you have the millennials who, you have this financial gap where trying to reach that 4, 5, 6 million pound, figure is becoming more challenging. And we're trying to bridge the gap between both of them, as well as the fact that we have a Labour government in place that doesn't really look kindly on millionaires. And that's where you've had the recent move of people wanting to leave the UK.
I spoke to someone yesterday at an event, and he said, look, transactions could happen very quick here if people are willing to drop their price. However, at the moment, no one's in a rush to sell, which means that everyone's standing fast on their price. There are a lot of buyers here that are looking for distressed deals. I don't know if you call them here, but people that are selling below market price, and those will be snapped up quite quick. Are you recommending your investors right now to buy those deals? Are you telling them to keep their capital close? Cash is king? What do you think?
I think just the market in general, outside of real estate, even if you look at the stock market, I think sitting on cash currently is a really good position to be in. Just with so much noise happening on an international scale, it'd be interesting to see which direction we go into. But I think if you're sitting on cash, you're in a really good position, and you can dictate which direction you want to go into. The difficulty you have is you're constantly waiting for this crash, and actually the crash might be right now.
He told me, for example, also that properties that are 14 million, they've come down to 12 million, but those are the owners that don't have to sell, so they're waiting. However, I think reality shock will be that when the market bounces back, it's not going to bounce back from 14 and go upwards. It's going to bounce from 12 and go upwards. So it'll take a long time to go back to those standards.
Well,
Do you agree?
The problem is, if you're looking at the top end market, anything over north of 10 million outside of London, it's going to be slow. Actually, anything outside of London, top 5 million is extremely slow. There's not enough buyers in the marketplace. Whether they don't want to transact in London, or maybe they don't want their money in the UK, but there's not enough buyers. You go into central London, things are still moving quite quickly, or you go to surrounding areas like Richmond, etc. They will still have enough transactions that are moving at a fast pace rate. But again, it all comes down to price. Pricing is the number one fundamental in this country at the minute for why things are selling.
If you were to start off as a new broker in London, would you focus on the super luxe market? Would you focus on the things that are below £1 million? Where do you think the transactions are happening? Where can you gain the confidence, gain the investors, and make a lot of money?
Yeah, so I get this question all the time. So I'd say a new broker is a fantastic time to get in. I think you perform better in weaker markets than better markets, because why are clients going to want to leave their agents when they're getting the prices that they need? So this is a time where you can build your brand, and this is where I think brand is way more important at the minute than doing transactions, because you have to think about the future, right? So if you're starting off in real estate, you don't know anything about it, it's quite easy to actually find this information online, learn it, and put this information out. And soon you will have some sort of gathering or following who will come to you for value. So I think the value in real estate is offering expert advice to people. Now, eventually, you can turn that value into making money, depending on which route you want to go into. Now, I wouldn't jump into going, super high end, because things aren't going to move quite quickly. As well as when you go high end, you need a certain level of experience and understanding of how these people talk.
Super prime luxe London, properties of 140 million. You need to have experience, right? You cannot just be thrown in there and expected to transact.
Because actually, one thing we mentioned about, so networking events, right? I don't see the value in networking events if you're looking for ultra high net worth clients, because I know my clients are not at networking events. Now, if you're looking to collaborate with brokers or people in other industries, or you just want to socialize, then I think networking events are great. But most of my clients are at sociable events where people know each other, or they might be in private members clubs or restaurants.
Where would you say, without hiding or without giving away your secrets, where would someone meet someone that they can do business with?
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? Because if you're looking for high net worth clients, families, they could just be at your gym. They could be at a David Lloyd spa. They could be in a restaurant in Mayfair.
Would you say you should always be dressed well, in a sense? We've talked about this before, how you're more of a jumpsuit guy. Would you say it's important to always dress... Would you say it's always more important to dress professionally in case you run into someone like this, or just be yourself? If you run into them, you know, the professionality of who you are will outshine?
Yeah, so it's interesting you said that. When I started off in real estate, I felt that, why do I need to change? I should authentically be myself. But you realize that if you are trying to do business with these people, you have to be able to relate to them in some way, right? And there is some sort of inner work that you're going to have to do. Now, you are going to be judged from day one in London based on how you articulate yourself, your posture, the way you dress, the way you speak. These 4 things are huge.
Your reputation precedes any meeting you can ever have, right?
Exactly, right? And then small things like your age, how experienced are you, who do you know, what have you sold? So a millionaire or a billionaire in London is less likely going to do business with someone who hasn't ever done any sales. But you may be able to get away with something if you go out of London and you're offering value, and maybe if you're very keen and, you know, you become... what's the term that I say? Rejection becomes your best friend. Mm-hmm. So you learn that actually in life, rejection is a constant thing.
No's become a yes, right? You want to hear
And
no's.
you throw mud at a wall and eventually it will stick. I think eventually you'll find a place where you can get in and then you can build from there. But I believe if you build a brand on that, on top of that, it kind of puts you on steroids. Because actually what a brand will tell you, it will tell you about who you are when you're not in that room. So, for example, if I was meeting somebody now, if they were meeting me and they saw my brand, I don't necessarily have to be in that room, and already my brand speaks for myself.
Precedes you, right? Would you say that matters about the brand you build around yourself, but also the brand or the company you work for? Are those important?
Yeah, of course, because brand is you, right? People invest in people. They don't invest. Yes, they're buying the property, etc. But again, as mentioned, most of my buyers just generally like doing business with me. And me, straight away, if I shake someone's hand and they give me a weak handshake and they got low energy, these aren't the sort of people who I really want to do business with. I'm not saying that I wouldn't, and I judge people, but generally I like people who have high energy, who can match me on the same level. That's what I'm about. And I find those people, men and women, they succeed the others. But definitely in London, appearance is everything. Posture.
Would you say watches, cars, things like that are important, or is it really just about how you?
Yeah, so there is this term of fake it till you make it. I remember doing an open house, and my client was looking at the Ring doorbell cameras, and he said, you know, these buyers don't look like they can afford my home. And I said, why? And he said, you know, I've seen some of the cars they own. Now, he also owned a car that wasn't that expensive, right? And I said to him, well, look at yourself. You know, you have a car, it's not very expensive, so what makes you very different? And he said, yeah, you got a point, but still, I'm not sure, right? And he's not necessarily that ignorant or that arrogant. So if he thinks that way, then imagine how everyone else feels. So if I'm rocking up to a client who has a £10 million home and I have a vehicle that is not clean, it's dirty, how am I going to look after someone else's home when I can't even look after my own car? How am I going to look after someone's home if I can't even look after my own suit or my own shirt?
I think there's a saying that says, look at someone's car and look at their bedroom or their house. That's how you know what type of person and business person they are.
Exactly.
If they're a messy place, they're a person that's all over the place, right?
Exactly. And actually, when I'm sitting in meetings with clients, if they don't know me already, they're usually asking me personal questions. Yeah. You know, are you married? What do you do for fun? Where do you live? You know, they're trying to work things out.
Do you ever get yourself judging clients? Let's say someone wants to sell you a £10 million or wants you to sell a £10 million property for them. Before you even see the property, they rock up in a Prius or something. Would you take them serious? You think it's important what type of car or watch your clients wear for you to take how serious they are?
No, I don't judge clients because looking at me, I could be easily judged.
Have you been misjudged?
Yeah,
before?
100%, man, 100%. Especially if you don't come from... So most people, not all, but a lot of people who are in luxury sales already are privileged. Not everyone, but some. So they already have the skills in place to be able to speak to these people. When you come from a world where you don't necessarily have that, and you have to learn it, and you have to adapt to it, and you have to put yourself in a position where you actually look the part, it becomes a lot more difficult. And along the way, along the journey, you will be judged. And it's for you to be able to better yourself, to be able to do the inner work, for you to transform or even recreate yourself in that sense.
I read a study the other day. I don't know if it's the right place to bring it up, but it compared two families and their children. I think the book came from Outliers. And it was a study that looked at children that came from well-off families and children that came from poor families. The well-off families, the parents went, to all the school recitals, they brought them to sports, they brought them to all these different places, and they encouraged the kids to disagree with anyone and everyone and have their own opinion. The poorer family, or the one that's less off, the parents didn't care much where the child went. The child was encouraged to just play on the street instead of pursue after-school curriculars and things like that. And when they followed these children across life, the ones that came from a well family that encouraged the kids to disagree with adults, to do a lot of different things, the parents were 24/7 involved. They went to parent-teacher conferences, both of the parents. The less well-off family, the parents didn't even go to the parent-teacher conferences, And there it showed how privileged children are able to expand on life a lot further because of the values that are instilled, the confidence that their parents give them, and the encouragement that the parents give them in terms of just disagreeing with people. And someone from a less well-off family, they were always told, don't disagree, just keep your head down and focus on things. And that's where I think things like that play this big impact on everything.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because you've got two sides to the spectrum. So if you look at a lot of successful business owners or entrepreneurs, a lot of them dropped out of school and didn't go down the traditional route, and they don't all come from privileged backgrounds. And then you have some that do, who may have actually had to work and grind themselves, but they may have been installed processes in place along their journey, which they took for them to have that sort of success, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people always talk like, this person dropped out of school and that person dropped out of university. Yeah, but they dropped out of Harvard. These people already knew exactly what they're doing. They already had things going on. So I think where a big difference comes as well, But I agree with what you're saying. Now, you said that you've never really been a leader in your life. Would you ever become a mentor to someone that's starting off in real estate?
Yeah, so I plan on doing a lot of mentoring for people who came from a similar background like myself or similar location to me, who found it difficult to be able to relate to people in an industry like luxury sales or real estate at the high end level, because it's important to understand that real estate attracts everyone. You come from all types of worlds. It's open for anyone. Actually, if you got a heartbeat, you're in. Right, it's for you to determine how successful you want to be. But many people don't know how to get in. They say to me, how do I get into?
You think this is the right place, right time for real estate?
To get in? I think there's always a perfect time. I don't think there's ever a wrong or right time. And it depends on where and location-wise. You could be 17 with no skills, go to Dubai and absolutely kill it, right?
But you could also be 40, be super successful in their home country and fail in Dubai.
Exactly. So it can go either way. So what I say to when people speak to me, if this is something that, if you're doing it for only cash flow reasons or financial gain, you're probably not going to last long, because there's going to be dips in the market. And when those dips happen, you need to be able to pivot around those dips. But yeah, I would do some mentoring where I can give back to my community, for people who are less fortunate, who don't have the same opportunities as maybe, the likes of myself or clients that I have, etc. And just be able to offer value in a sense where I can position them into a place where they're not making the same mistakes that I did.
I think that's something that we mentioned earlier as well, right? It's important to learn from mistakes, but why not learn from mistakes that other people have made and you don't repeat them?
Exactly.
The pitfalls that others have made. And I think, you as a mentor could really implement a lot of value there. You think it's important for people to have a mentor when they start off in real estate, or would you say training is enough, you can get started?
No, I think if you have a mentor, you're going to hurdle past everyone, right? I never really saw the value in having a mentor, because I thought, I can just get it myself, and it's quite ignorant to think that you don't. But if you have a mentor, he's going to direct you in a position, and the same journey that takes one person 10 years, it's going to take you 3 or 4 years to be able to get there in time and with more experience and have the right contacts in place, because actually the mentor is producing the long-term goal for you, heading you into a direction. Now, once you're in that direction, it can go wherever. It's up to you which side it goes. But I do see true value in having a mentor or a team of people who you can speak with, because success is less built on one person. It's usually built with a team.
Now you mentioned teams quite a bit, and I think it's so important that if you're in real estate, that you have a good supportive team around you. People that you can say, you know, I have this client, he's looking for this. These are the things that come into my mind that I can present to him. Do you guys have something else? I think team camaraderie is so important in real estate. I think there's too many people that are too greedy, that don't want to discuss anything or hide their clients' details. I think I want to position it in a different way. You need to collaborate with other agents. You know, it's better to have 50% share of 10 deals than have full commission on 2 deals, right? Do you see it in the same way, or do you, as a lone wolf, prefer to work by yourself?
No, because, for example, if say the event yesterday we went to in Mayfair, you're based in Dubai, I could quite easily retain someone from London and say, I have opportunities in Dubai, let me act on your behalf, right? But I thought the fact you're here now, you're now the new CEO of Fine & Country, you're going to be back and forth, it's important for you to also have your clients who are based over here. Whether you can funnel them through me or funnel them through whoever, we need to be able to be in a position, because actually there may be a point where you're out in Dubai and you have someone you can trust and you can say, right, do you know what, Pierre, could you help me with this?
Exactly.
Likewise, I'm not an expert in real estate in Dubai. I'm not pretending to be. But at least if I can surround myself with people who are, that puts me in a better position. Now, I'm going to lose more opportunities if I'm just trying to hide everyone from you. And I say, look, guys, I've got these deals. And then, you know, on the other side, I'm like, right, Tillmann, can you help me? And blah, blah, blah. And I'm saying to them, I don't want to put you directly in with, I just think you'll get there a lot quicker and there'll be a lot more value that's added. Now, if you can put your client in touch with the right people without you having to be involved, then the transaction's going to move a lot quicker and they're going to respect you for presenting those opportunities.
And you have a lot to help your client, right? At the end of the day. And it's all about, in this industry, I think we're customer service centered. We need to service the clients. And It's not about protecting ourselves, best interests, you know, getting more commission ourselves. If we can service the client better, he'll come back, he'll bring his brother, his friends, whoever, and bring more business to you. And that's what a lot of brokers, I think, don't have the long-term vision for. They're all about what's a commission that I can get into my pocket in the next month, rather than what's a commission I can get into my pocket in a year's time. Pierre, thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you for coming, Tillmann.
Thank you very much. It's been a very interesting podcast.
So hopefully we'll see you in the next couple of months.
Exactly.
And we'll get back to it.
Next one we can film in Dubai.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.